I want you to think about the last time that you were in a serious conflict with someone. Maybe it was a business partner who you had a lot of tension with. Maybe it was a partner, a spouse that you had the same conversation for the 100th time and it kept bringing up all this tension. Think about it. What did you do when you were in that situation? If you're like most people, you either tried to talk it out or you avoided it or you blew up and got aggressive. Maybe you Googled how to have difficult conversations. Maybe you went to therapy. Maybe you brought in HR. And maybe that helped a little for a while. But then something happened, a moment of stress, a tone of voice, a trigger of some sort, and suddenly you were right back to where you started. I'm Jeremy Pollack. I'm a social organizational psychologist with a specialty in peace and conflict psychology. I'm also the CEO of Pollack Peacebuilding Systems. And here's what I've learned after more than a decade of mediating conflicts inside some of the world's largest organizations between business partners, executives, co-parents, couples, teams in crisis. The reason that most conflict resolution fails isn't the strategy, it's the brain. Not metaphorically, I mean literally. Your nervous system, the way your brain has been conditioned to perceive and respond to threat, is the hidden variable that almost everyone ignores. And until you address conflict at that level, you're building peace essentially on a house of cards. So today, I'm going to walk you through 7 neuroscience-based principles that can genuinely transform how you handle conflict at work, at home, in any relationship that matters to you. And these aren't just concepts. Each one is grounded in research on how your brain actually functions. And each one comes with real practical tools that hopefully you can use at home and at work. If you want to go even deeper on these, get my book, Wired for Peace, which goes over each one of these neuroscience-based principles in depth. All right, let's get into it. Principle number 1, solutions and stress don't mix, always de-escalate first. I want you to picture Will Smith at the 2022 Oscars. He's walking up on stage, he slaps Chris Rock across the face on live television in front of tens of millions of people. And the next day, he reflects and he called it inexcusable and unacceptable, made a big apology. And he wasn't wrong that those things were unacceptable and inexcusable. But here's what's important to understand in that moment. Will Smith's rational brain was essentially offline. His sympathetic nervous system had taken over. And in that state, what psychologists and neuroscientists call an acute stress response, the part of the brain responsible for judgment, perspective taking, creative problem solving, all of those parts are dramatically suppressed or what's called downregulated. And this happens to all of us. When we're escalated, our heart's racing, our stomachs get tight, our adrenaline starts flooding, we're all biologically incapable of doing our best thinking. The brain regions driving the state of defensiveness are wired for survival. They're not wired for collaboration and connection. They narrow your psychological repertoire down to some basic behaviors: fight, flight, freeze. Here's the thing that seems maybe obvious once you hear it, but that almost everybody skips when they're thinking about conflict resolution. No one can resolve a conflict while they're escalated. So that means you can't, the other person can't. We all have to take the temperature down. We have to regulate. We have to de-escalate. That means regulating yourself, self-regulation. It also means helping the other person to de-escalate, or what's called sometimes co-regulation. So what does that look like practically? You've got to get your brain and body messages of safety. You've got to tell your brain and body, hey, it's okay to relax. So for instance, breathing, really, really important. If you take a long, deep breath in and then a slow breath out, and relaxing your body as you exhale. And while you're doing this physiological technique, you're also doing a cognitive technique, telling yourself messages of safety. Things like, I'm okay, I can handle this, I know exactly what to do here, this isn't about me. Whatever you need to hear to help your brain know that, hey, there's no tiger in front of me. I don't need to fight or flee right now to survive. Instead, I'm safe. It's okay to listen and respond calmly. You've got to get your body and your brain some messages of safety. So again, the rule is simple. Regulation before resolution every time. You are not going to solve conflicts if you are escalating. Principle number 2, learn to look at conflict as an opportunity. Now, I know you've heard things like this before. Sounds like a motivational poster or something, but I want to give you the neurological case for why it's actually important and why your brain is probably working against you on this one. Your brain is a prediction machine. Its entire job is to anticipate what's coming based on past experiences and prepare your body accordingly. If your history with conflict, going back to childhood, old relationships, every tense meeting, blow up that you had, has taught your brain that conflict equals danger, then your nervous system is going to fire a stress response every time conflict shows up in your life before you even thought about it consciously. That conditioned response is what keeps people stuck. It's not weakness, It's neural circuitry. And the good news is circuitry can be rewired. When you're escalated, you miss the opportunity that conflict carries. But the truth is, conflict is where growth happens. Think about how you've learned the most important lessons. Were they from things going smoothly or from friction, challenge, failure, struggle, mistakes? Organizations too don't innovate when everything is comfortable. People don't grow when everything is comfortable. We need friction. We need tension. We need conflict in order to grow, to optimize, to learn, etc. Now, once you're regulated and back to what I would call baseline conflict, like not escalated, but engaged, conflict becomes a moment of pure potential. The question is whether you're going to be destructive or creative with that potential, with that tension. That's always a choice, but you can only access that choice when you've trained your brain to frame conflict differently. So one technique to start reconditioning your brain to look at conflict differently or to not react in the same way and instead calm down so you could look at conflict as an opportunity. This is called exposure with self-regulation. Find something that mildly activates you. It could be a news segment. It could be a difficult email you've read, a podcast host that you don't agree with. I want you to play it or read it for just a few seconds and practice staying calm and curious while engaged with it. And this means doing those self-regulation techniques in the face of it while you're exposed to that stimulus. Over time, if you keep doing this and you're relaxing your brain and body while you're exposed to the stimulus, you're literally reconditioning the neural association between conflict and threat. You're building new memories, new experiences, and hopefully new predictions around conflict. And in that way, hopefully you can start to see conflict as a moment of potential and opportunity rather than just something you want to avoid. Principle number 3, certainty is an illusion. Remain curious. Here's one of the biggest hidden drivers of unresolved conflict: the need to be right. And I'm not just talking about stubbornness. There's neuroscience behind this. When you are in uncertainty, when you don't know how something is going to resolve, when your narrative is being challenged in some way, your brain registers that as a threat, literally a threat. The same stress circuits that fire when you're physically in danger, fire when your sense of certainty is threatened. And when you reestablish certainty by winning an argument or defending your story or pivoting your point, the brain releases dopamine, and that's a reward. It feels good to be right. So the brain learns the way out of this uncomfortable state is to dig in harder, and that's the pattern it starts to learn. That's why people double down in conflict. It's not irrational, it's neurological. It's also why most conflicts never get resolved. Both sides are too busy defending their version of reality to ever truly listen and understand each other. Here's what the science tells us about perception, and this is important to think about when you're considering how certain you feel or how right you are, how moral or ethical you are, like more than the other person. Your brain doesn't directly experience the world. It constructs your reality from the inside out. It filters all kinds of information in the world through your sensory neurons, transducing that information into electrochemical signals, interpreting that sense data through the lens of your prior experiences and predictions. So all of this stuff happening in the outside world is getting really translated by your nervous system. It is not the world directly. And so two people in the same conversation are fundamentally having a different neurological experience of that conversation. Neither of you is lying potentially about what they remember or what they experienced. You just each have your own very unique perspectives based on your nervous systems. So the antidote to solving this is curiosity. Curiosity requires uncertainty. It's only available when you're willing to not be right or when you're willing to not know all of it. It's one of the most important and powerful tools in conflict resolution that we have. When you learn to ask, what am I missing here? Instead of how do I prove my point? Everything starts to change in that conversation, both in your own conflicts and if you're a mediator in mediations that you do for other people. So when you feel that surge of certainty, like sort of even an adrenaline-fueled conviction that you're right and they're wrong, treat that as a cue. That's your signal to slow down and try to get curious. What would I ask here? What would I want to find out here if I knew nothing about the situation? I wasn't certain about it at all, and I just wanted to be curious. Principle number 4, peace starts in small ways. People wait for the big repair conversation. Sometimes the grand gesture, the relationship summit. And sometimes that conversation is necessary and sometimes it works and it's important. But if you don't understand what actually builds peace at the neural level, that big conversation will typically not be very game changing. Here's what the science tells us. Relationships and the sense of safety that makes conflict resolution possible are both built through thousands of micro moments. A pause before you respond, a softened tone, eye contact, a moment of warmth before getting into a difficult conversation. These aren't minor, these aren't unimportant. These are very important, critical little moments. These are co-regulatory signals where your nervous system communicates to the other person's nervous system, you're safe with me right now. I'm not an opponent. I'm on your team. And that safety is the prerequisite for a productive conversation that follows. So what this means practically, don't wait for the right moment to rebuild a relationship. Start with the next small interaction. Not everything needs to be a big talk or the game-changing talk, or we're gonna turn things around. Just have a calm, genuine check-in, even if it's about something benign, even if it's just a little question asked with real curiosity, a moment of acknowledgement. These kinds of little acts accumulate, and over time they shift the neural terrain, the prediction model around this relationship. Also, be intentional about communication. Not just what you say, but how you say it. The channel you choose matters. The tone matters. Your facial expression matters. Communication isn't just content transfer between two minds. It's a neurological and physiological event. And every element of how you show up sends signals that either increase or decrease the other person's sense of threat. So small steps, consistent behavior, that's how trust starts to build over time. Little moments of peace. Principle 5, resolution requires care, transformation requires trust. This distinction between care and trust changed how I do this work. Care and trust are not the same thing, and they don't come necessarily from exactly the same place in the brain. They're two distinct psychological and neurological constructs, and they play different roles in conflict. Okay, so here's something that's important to remember. You don't need trust to resolve conflict. Trust takes time. It's built through many consistent experiences over months, sometimes years. If we wait for trust before attempting conflict resolution, we could be stuck forever. But care is interesting. Care can be chosen right now, regardless of the history, regardless of the other person. It doesn't matter if you know them or not. They could be a stranger on the street, and you can decide in this moment to approach the conversation or the person with genuine care, even for just a few seconds. That's care about their well-being, care about their needs, maybe their goals. And when people feel cared for, when they sense that you actually see them and hear them, it lowers their defenses. It makes resolution way more possible. And also, if you're coming from a caring space, you're going to communicate in a way that makes resolution more possible. So think of care as the catalyst for conflict resolution. It's the minimum viable condition for people to actually work something out. They have to care about the other's needs or goals or values on some level. Trust, on the other hand, is the foundation for conflict or relational transformation. Not just resolving the immediate issue, but fundamentally shifting the relationship over time. Trust comes from not threatening someone's basic needs, goals, value, but giving them the sense that you are safe to be around, and doing that repetitively so that eventually their nervous system stops predicting threat from you and starts predicting safety. So again, both matter. Trust and care are important, but in the right order. I want to lead with care in conflict resolution, and if I want to transform the relationship, I want to lead with trust. And I have to build trust over time and many consistent experiences of care. Principle number 6, we're built to collaborate. Anthropologists and evolutionary biologists have a term for our species. It's called ultrasocial. Human beings don't just live in groups. We build civilizations, we divide labor, we collectively raise children, we sacrifice for strangers sometimes. These are very unique and strange traits among animals. So we are considered something very special, especially among mammals. There's not other mammals that are considered ultrasocial, except for maybe sometimes mole rats that are debated whether they are actually ultrasocial. But in other words, we are hardwired for these deep, complex, cooperative relationships. It's the core of who we are. So the question is, why does it often feel like the opposite, like we're wired for conflict? We're actually not wired for conflict. We are wired for peace. We're wired for collaboration. But the thing is, conflict activates the stress system. And the stress system narrows everything we do down to this self-preservation mechanism. When you're escalated, collaboration feels impossible because your brain has essentially shifted into a mode where the other person is a threat to be defeated or avoided, not a partner to work with. And that's just happening at a neurological level. But the research on the way our brains and nervous systems work is clear. Once you regulate yourself. Once you are at least a baseline level of regulation, a basic level of care or connection, your natural state is collaboration. It's not fighting. You don't have to manufacture collaboration or cooperation. You just have to remove the obstacle to it, which is escalation. What does effective collaboration look like in conflict? What do we actually want to do to feel like we're collaborating in a conflict resolution? So number one, I want to give everyone genuine agency in the process. I don't want to impose solutions on people. I want to help them co-create the solutions with me so that they buy into them. Number two, I need to cultivate humility. I need to stay humble. I need to recognize that other people's perspectives also matter, their buy-in matters, etc. The other thing is I need to anchor conflict resolution processes in the idea that we have shared goals. When two people or two groups or two departments are in conflict, they would be served to identify what they actually both want. This is called common ground. So that they stop being opponents for even just a few moments and start being teammates with shared goals, hopefully interdependent goals, so that they're working on the same problem together. The problem isn't a person or a group. It's this third thing that we are trying collectively to solve together. That's true collaboration. Final principle number 7, new solutions lie outside the structure. Sometimes you've done everything right, you're regulated, you're curious, you're communicating with care, you're collaborating, and you still find yourself at an impasse. You're still stuck in this conflict. You can't find a solution that seems to work for everybody. And that's when you have to get creative. That means getting outside the conceptual structure of the conflict. Here's what I mean by structure. Every conflict lives inside a conceptual framework that includes assumptions, expectations, categories, constraints, most of which are basically invisible unless you're really thinking about them and sort of analyzing the conflict. A lot of times you're not even aware that these structural elements are there, but they are defining the space in which the conflict exists, and so the space in which a solution can exist. And if you can only see solutions inside the current structure, you're limited to what the structure allows. Creative problem solving, the kind that the brain is actually capable of, requires stepping outside of those structures, outside of those constraints. We have to loosen the constraints. We have to question the assumptions. We have to ask, what if we approach this whole thing differently? We have to ask, what solutions have we not thought about yet? And if we want to get creative, 3 mental states support this. Number 1, inspiration. The belief that a new solution actually exists even if you can't see it yet. That's important. You have to feel inspired to feel a sense of motivation. The second state is courage, because stepping outside a conceptual structure that you've lived in for months or years can feel very destabilizing, especially when your identity may be tied to a particular version of events or a part in this conflict. So having some courage is going to be really important to get creative. Also, I think fun and even maybe play is important in getting creative. The neuroscience is clear. Play shifts the nervous system. It increases cognitive flexibility. It releases dopamine, promotes social bonding. A brainstorming session that feels like a game is neurologically more productive than one that feels like courtroom or some dreary chore or something. So if you're at an impasse, the answer isn't to dig harder and keep fighting. It's to step back and get some space and let the mind wander and challenge your own assumptions and start exploring, maybe having some fun with it. There is a solution that exists. You just haven't gotten outside the structure to find it yet. That's really important to remember. So bringing this all together, 7 principles, all rooted in how your brain actually works. Number 1, de-escalate first. You can't resolve what you can't even clearly think about. Number 2, see conflict as an opportunity. Train your nervous system to respond with optimism rather than pessimism. Number 3, stay curious. Certainty is the enemy of resolution. Loosen your grip on being right. Number 4, start small. Peace is built in micro moments, not grand gestures. Number 5, lead with care, build trust over time. Remember, care is important for immediate conflict resolution. Trust is important for long-term conflict transformation. Number 6, we're built to collaborate. Remember, you were built for this too. Remove the obstacles and let your nature take over. And number 7, get creative. When you're stuck, get outside the structure of the conflict. The answer is somewhere out there. What I want you to take away from this is something deeper than a framework. It's a new relationship with conflict itself. Conflict is not a problem to be eliminated or avoided. It's an energy, the friction from which all growth comes. The question is whether you use it destructively or creatively, and that choice begins inside your own nervous system. I've spent over a decade working on this with executives, teams, couples, co-parents, organizations in genuine crisis, and I've distilled everything I've learned, every principle, every neuroscience conflict, every practical tool into a single comprehensive guide, and that guide is my book, Wired for Peace, using 7 neuroscience-based principles to resolve conflicts. So if you want to go deep on how to actually apply these principles with specific research-backed tools for every stage of conflict resolution, the link to get your copy is in the description below. I hope you get it. I hope you enjoy it. This isn't another communication book. It's a brain science manual for building real, lasting peace in your organization and your relationships, and hopefully within yourself. So hopefully you get the book, do the work, and start wiring your brain for peace. I'm Jeremy Pollack, and I'll see you in the next video.